Welcome to the Heart of Dad podcast. Heart of Dad is a podcast for entrepreneurs who are passionate about their families and business and looking to find more clarity, more balance and more alignment in all areas of their life. Come and join the community at heartofdad.com or on Facebook at groups/Heart of Dad. This week on Heart of Dad, I'm interviewing Nathan Simmonds. Nathan helps business leaders and professionals stuck in their 9-to-5s take the lead on their careers, work out what they bring when they're at their best and create fulfilment in the work they do. He does this using the tools and ideas he's learned as a business coach, trainer, speaker, and soon-to-be author. He has a vulnerability and courage gathered from a multitude of highs and lows, personally and professionally, which is deeply reflected upon. Whether it's traveling the world, client breakthroughs, or severe health challenges and hospitalisation, regardless, as a result, he now shares this back as a leadership and career coach, challenging people's thinking so they can become more incredible than yesterday. This week on Heart of Dad, I'm delighted to introduce Nathan Simmonds. Hi, Nathan.
Hey, Matt. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you here. So, Nathan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit, he says. At 42, I think most people have got a few stories to tell. Business, personal, let's give you the headline. So 23 years in management and leadership positions. Got my first management job when I was 18, 19, hospitality side of things. I have travelled the world extensively, so I've worked in multiple sectors. I've lived in on 4 different continents as a result of some of the different jobs I've had and my life desires. I have been frustrated, confused, constricted by the work that I've always done. I've always felt that I didn't fit in. One of the biggest challenges I've had, didn't feel like I fitted into jobs, didn't feel like I was valued, or my point of view I was able to get my point of view across. And I really struggled with some of that stuff. And it wasn't until the last few years that I really started to understand what it is I'm actually designed to be doing, and really dived into that. The last 9 years being development, my internal dialogue, my internal leadership mechanisms, and then sharing that with other people to help them develop their internal leadership, to help them get the job that they're actually designed to be doing, get promoted, get paid what they're actually worth, so that they can go and create their own impacts and their own legacy. And I'm kind of mindful about the language, because we end up getting caught in this trap of saying, I'm not meant to be doing this, or I'm not meant to be doing that, or I'm meant to be doing that. And actually, what I learned was what I am doing right now, or was previously doing, was exactly what I was meant to be doing, because it was teaching me all the stuff that I needed to learn. And all the time that I was resisting that and pulling against it, I was actually denying myself the learning experience, which was actually going to help me move forward. And it's what I've come to understand through my studies and my research, self-analysis and self-reflection. It's not what you're meant to be doing, it's what you're designed to be doing. There is a thing that you are biologically designed to do from an evolutionary point of view. And it's not what you're meant to be doing, it's what you're actually brought here to be doing, like I say, at a biological level. When I started to understand that for myself, my job situation changed, my work situation changed, the way that I interact with my family changed. And now that I have that understanding, I give that to other people. I share the questions and the insights with people, so that they can go and find what they're designed to do. And in that case, they get to then create more fulfillment in their life. They're able to create more quality time with the people they care about in their lives. They are able to get creative, have autonomy in the work in the workspaces they're living in, and have a sense of fulfillment about the life they actually live. And that comes from the immense amount of failure that I've had in 20 years, the amount of mistakes I've made, the errors I've made at interviews, the rejections I've had, the valuable lessons I've had that I've only gained in retrospect, because I was too, what's the word I'm looking for? Self-centered might be a good word for it, but I was too focused on me the whole time and what I was going to get. So when I went into these certain situations, I didn't actually reap the full benefit of that understanding until I went back and looked at it and went, now I get that. But when I'm training and working with 20-year-olds, 24-year-olds, 25-year-olds that are starting to go through this, I share that experience very clearly with them. These are the things that happen. This is what this was the viewpoint. This was, this is the drawback from that. This is the benefit of shifting that view. And just helping people make that shift quicker. Crikey, I feel like I've gone off on several different tangents.
There's a ton in there to explore. And what about your family situation? Tell us a little bit about that.
The family situation is super interesting. So we have a daughter. So I have a wife and a daughter. My daughter is 7. We opted to homeschool. And we have always felt strongly about that because the school, as we know, it didn't work for me. I didn't fit school, it didn't fit me. And the same for my wife as well. So we opted to homeschool. We made some quite serious decisions about how we were going to work and how we were going to make that happen. My wife was not going to return to work after having Poppy. It probably wouldn't have been possible anyway because Poppy didn't sleep longer than 45 minutes for about the first 2.5 years. And Anna was maintaining a lot of that part of the relationship while I was continuing to work. So we homeschool. The plan inside that though was for me to focus on the leadership development, the one-to-one coaching, group training, social work, all those elements, and come away from a full-time job and then start my own business so that I could actually spend more time at home as a family unit as well, and spend some of that time home educating, homeschooling our daughter in this space, and also being able to travel and do that as well. So not so much just a homeschooling, but a global schooling. Part of my business model is that in the future that we will travel as a family for my work and what I do, whether that's speaking, training, or coaching or events or whatever, so that we can move as a unit so Poppy can get that full experience because it's possible.
So Taya, thanks for sharing that, Nathan. It's brilliant insights already, and I'm just wondering, Poppy's 7. You've got this very clear vision of how you want to live your life, and as a family as well as you individually. Were you thinking about that before you had her? Was that already in your mind as you as you started thinking about having children in the future and how you wanted your life to be?
There were elements of that, yes, because we've been into certain parts of personal development. I also got a certificate in permaculture, so looking at ecosystems and environmental sustainability. So in the permaculture element, you're looking at earth care, people care, and fair share. So you work in these 3 dynamics, and okay, well, when we're looking at people care, how do we want to care for each other? How do we want to care for our daughter? How do we want to care for the people around us? So these thoughts start to kind of percolate to the surface. The bubbles start to come up. As Poppy was born, I had a huge crisis of leadership. I don't think it's a midlife crisis, and I have a different take, I think, these days because I'm in my midlife. What a midlife crisis is. As Poppy was being born, though, it was my team was failing at work. My business results were terrible for the sales team that I was running, and I couldn't get them to shift. And we had some challenges around Poppy being born. My wife was in hospital for a little while beforehand, building up to that process. And I stumbled on Simon Sinek's work, Start With Why. The whole, everyone has a why, everyone has a purpose. So I went down this self-development rabbit hole of finding out what my why was. Because, and I don't know if this happens to all men at the point of birth. I know a lot of men that it happens to around kind of the late 30s, 40 point, where we start thinking about, actually, shit, have I got less years in front of me than I've got behind me? And you have a very radical recalibration of what is going on in your life. What am I actually putting down now? I've done all this foundational work over here between 0 and 40. What was that all for? Where am I focusing attention? What am I going to do with that energy now? What do I want my legacy to be? And it's interesting that it's only around about 40 that men, I found that I've spoken to, men start talking about legacy and purpose. Before that, if I talk to a 20-year-old, they have no idea what I mean by legacy in the majority. So you get to kind of that late 30s, Poppy turns up. What do I want to be? Who do I want to be in relation to my daughter? What example am I showing her? Categorically, I loved my job. I fucking hated the life that I was living. It really tightened up my thinking as I was going through that journey of Poppy being born and her being here now. And that,
can you just say what you meant by loving your job, hating life? Because that's a really interesting comment.
I love leadership. And I absolutely adore working with teams and being in environments where I can help develop those people. The environment that I was in, which was insurance and the financial sector and that business, was very, very restrictive. There was a lot of very what's the word I'm looking for? Selfish thinkers in there that were kind of trying to project, you do it this way or not at all. So there was no sense of creativity. There was no sense of autonomy in that space. I'm a very outspoken individual. I know what works. I know how to get the best out of people and for people to do that for themselves. But I was not able to deliver that creativity. I was not living up to my full potential. And the tensioning of being in that environment and not being able to display my full potential, and as I understand it now, it starts to become implosive. It starts to be really detrimental. You start to kind of fold in on yourself because you can't express yourself fully. And it's super damaging. What happens as a result of doing that, and I've seen in my life over 20 odd years in career, and for other people, is you start putting coping mechanisms in place. Those coping mechanisms are seriously dangerous. So there's the socially acceptable ones: overworking, drinking too much coffee, too much time on social media. I mean, they're fairly socially acceptable things. All the way through, though, to previous points in my life, abusing recreational drugs. And that almost cost me my life, but I didn't realise what state my mental health was in at that point. So I love the leadership part, but the environment, the stifling, the constriction of not being able to be creative and autonomous in what I'm doing, that part, I was really super detrimental, and I was really starting to hate what my life was amounting to in that arena. And the other part is when I later did more research on it, I wrote a book about some of these parts of my life. The thread went. One, how damaging this is. Two, how many people are doing this and experiencing these same sensations. And three, the excuses we're telling ourselves just to justify why we do what we do and validate to ourselves while we stay in those spaces, because we feel like the problem, because we think it's only inside our own head and it's not affecting other people. And actually, if you look at the statistics, something like 87% of people around the world are not engaged in the work they're doing. 12.8 million work days were lost in 2018 due to workplace stress, anxiety, and depression. So we fool ourselves because we're thinking, what are people thinking of us? Oh, I've got a problem. I must be the problem. People don't want to hear my problem, and therefore we can it up, and then we go and do these dangerous or these coping strategies to try and get us through the day, and then wonder why we're so jaded with life, quite frankly.
It's interesting, sort of circling back to where you started today, and you were saying about how the bumps in your life, the challenges, the failures have all been part of preparing you for this time of purposefulness in your life, design, living to your design rather than what you think you should be doing. And I was just reflecting on how what you're sharing now, because when you're in it, right, it feels like hell, and a lot of your energy either goes into that avoidance that you're talking about, or trying to change it.
Yeah.
So how do you work with people to get them to sort of look at the experience and say, okay, well, maybe this is something I need to change, but actually it's also teaching me an awful lot about where my design for life is?
Yeah. So one thing you talked about, or the one word which I share a lot, and I think this may have come from Brené Brown, is the word should. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I should have said this. Well, you either did or you didn't. And actually, when you look at the dynamics and the emotional content behind the word should on its own, it's one of the most damaging and crippling words in the English dictionary, because it's built on shame and guilt. Oh, I should have done that. Well, did you do it? No. Okay. That's it. Oh, I should have said that. Did you? No. Okay. Well, that's fine. What you find with people is, and you know, I've done it myself previously, the moment you say, oh, I should have done that, you're getting caught up in the emotion of guilt and shame, but you're not creating a forward action that helps to help you to change it. So when I'm talking to people and teaching them, the first thing I teach them when I hear that word, and I hear it a lot because we are taught at a very early age to use that language, is, well, either you did or you didn't do it. What's the thing that you learned from that? Looking back on what actually happened, what's the one valuable lesson that you learned from that that you can then use to improve the situation when it happens next time? What's one thing that you've learned that will help you to deliver a better result next time out of that kind of relationship? So that the person can instantly grab one action, and you can make a 1 degree shift every single time that situation occurs. And the moment you catch yourself saying should, you've got an opportunity there to shift the language and make a 1 degree shift to make an improvement for next time that situation comes up, categorically. And I catch people doing that and they go, okay, yeah, I'll get it. Because you know full well when they're saying should, they're just going to keep repeating the same thing over and over again because they're not creating an action to come out of it. The other element that you talked about is, how do I use those examples? It's because they're real. It's because people know they're genuine and they're authentic that I've gone through them. I went for a promotion for one specific job, and I think it was 3 times that I got knocked back. And I got given a different reason every single time, but I was still trying to open that door, not realizing it wasn't my door to be opening. And I give people that potentially going for that job or potentially going for their promotion, I give them all the feedback that I got through each one of those knockbacks, and it helped them to understand, okay, actually, what do you need to include in the interview? What do you need to include in the experience? What approach can you take? And also making sure it's their door. Because if you're knocking on the door, you know, the opportunity, not your door. So when people start to understand that, it's easy for them to go, actually, it's not my door. I can go to the right door because it feels right. And when I also talk about this stuff, I speak to people, and I think when I say it, people go, yeah, because I also speak honestly. Talking to a client yesterday, talking about leadership. He wants to get into a leadership role. He wants to do certain things in his job. And I said, how do people see you currently in your workspace? Well, they see me as a bit of a joker. Okay, so how do your leaders see you? As a bit of a joker. Okay, so are they going to give you a leadership opportunity if they see that? No. Okay, because this is what they're seeing. This is how they're interacting. This is how you're responding and reacting to them. And because I've seen it so many times in myself and in other people around me, I can use all those experiences and say, look, if you tweak this, if you adjust this and tighten this, this is where it's going to take you to. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. What sort of conversations do you want to be having? What sort of job do you want to be in? How do you want that to feel when you get into that space? And doing that for, you know, not just dads, you know, yes, dads, mums, dads, people that just want to be being creative with their work, not being a creative, but being creative in their work and having the autonomy to do something actually that helps them to demonstrate who they are.
How do you know if you're doing a job or a career or a calling that you're designed for? Or what are the signs are?
What, it's probably easier in this day and age to say what are you doing that's telling, or what's happening that's telling you you're not in that job. Let me break that down. There's a few excuses we tell ourselves, especially, and we do this especially as dads. Why? Because we are providers. I think it's part of the male archetype. There's a level of provision that comes into the male archetype, and we really focus on that. And I felt it myself, and it's okay. The obligation excuse. I can't change job, get promoted, cause any risk to my family environment because I have to put food on the table. Is the first excuse. The not enough excuse. I'm not intelligent enough, rich enough, tall enough, black enough, white enough, whatever. It is another excuse we tell ourselves as well. So what we do is we hold ourselves back from actually going for the job interview or doing something we enjoy doing because we think that we're not capable of doing the job or learning to do how the job. So the first one is the obligation to family, etc. And then the second one is we think we're not capable of doing it. So there's a couple of excuses we tell ourselves. But what happens is you get caught in that trap for a couple of those traps for a long period of time. And as I say, you start using the coping strategies. They start to come up. Drinking too much coffee. I used to do it. 5-6 cups of coffee a day. Strong coffee. Overworking for some of us. And then you get into kind of some more of the high risk activities. So socially acceptable is still alcohol. Okay, what level of alcohol are you actually drinking? You know, these are all numbing techniques. Then you get into the office affairs. How many people are having office affairs that actually have a problem in life? No. So you're talking dopamine hits. Gambling, again, you know, it's still fairly socially acceptable. It's legal to do. And then you get into drugs and those sorts of things. But they're all creating a dopamine loop to make you feel better. So when you start doing this is a clear sign that something is not right somewhere. There is a flag going up. I can't remember who made the quote. You know, it basically says, "Oh, you hate your job." Well, why didn't you say? There's a club for that. It's called Everybody, and they all meet at the bar once a week. You know, it's just these, when we start looking at these flags, okay, actually, what am I designed to be doing? And we can ask 3 core questions to help shift out of that. One is, what have I done in the last 12 months that filled me with pride, like genuine pride, whether it was at home, at work, and what I'm doing? In the last 12 months, what have I done that has filled me, or, you know, worked on that filled me with excitement? And it's almost like doing a mini appraisal on yourself, like a yearly review. So pride and excitement. And then asking the question, what are my top 3 to 5 values or behaviors that I display when I'm excited and working on something that excites me, and when I'm working on something that creates pride? And from picking that stuff out, you can start to go, oh, I like doing this. Oh, that's important to me. Oh, that's relevant. Okay, let's bring that together. You bundle that up into a little ball on one piece of paper, and you turn around and say, okay, well, what job can I do that allows me to do that stuff more than 80% of my day? Because if I'm doing that stuff 80% of the day, how freaking awesome would life be if you spent the largest portion of your day doing these things?
So I mean, I think it's brilliant, Nathan. Sorry, I think we kind of glitch in the internet there. But I just think that's a brilliant share. And I think, you know, there'll be a ton of value for anybody listening who feels out of alignment with their design for life. And I love that phrase that you shared. I'm thinking here now about the intersections between that kind of mindset that you have, that vision you have for your life, and how it plays out at home. And it's kind of, you know, we were talking earlier about, I asked you, you know, did you have a vision even before Poppy was born about this lifestyle you were going to lead? You know, that you were going to homeschool her, you were going to travel, you were going to give a global schooling, because it sounds like, you know, in amongst all the messiness of life that you've had, that we all get, you know, there's also been this kind of rising up through with a vision of how you want to live your life. And one of the things I've noticed in these interviews is that you know, there are certain dad entrepreneurs who have really nailed what I'd call intentionality. You know, for them, they're kind of, maybe not every living, breathing moment, but a big part of their energy is focused on, what do I want to create in my life and how am I going to create it? And you haven't said that explicitly, that's what I'm hearing from you as well. And so I'm wondering how that's played out in your family life.
So when I really understood what my purpose was, so Poppy gets born, Poppy's about to be born, I go and find Simon Sinek, you know, no coincidences. Simon Sinek turns up in my life, start with why methodology. When I started to understand what my why was and my purpose, I started to be able to recalibrate the rest of all the things that have happened in my life. Oh, that's why I behave like that. Oh, that's why I talk like that. And because I didn't have a handle on it until then, I could see some of the detrimental behaviors that were coming out of it. So my purpose is to challenge, I am challenging people's thinking so that they can become more incredible than yesterday. And I've done that throughout my life. When I started to zero in on that, what happened was I started to understand that having a purpose is one thing. Having a physical manifestation of it, though, is the next thing. So it's all well and good, I have a purpose, I go and do this job. You know, when I get to 40, actually, what do I want to be doing with the rest of my life and the time I've got on this planet in this format? what's going to be the biggest physical manifestation of that thinking on this planet that is then going to, you know, support my daughter and then have that ripple effect and impact other people. And I started to go through a process of thinking and approaching around this. And I was like, I love leadership development. I love coaching. I love working with people. And you talk about the intentionality. The purpose then started to align with the goal. And that goal is the physical output. And that over a course of a number of understandings and teachings and trainings and self-development things turned into 100 million people. And I still feel like I'm at the beginning of that journey, and I may still feel like I'm at the beginning of that journey forevermore. The idea is that I will positively and successfully influence the growth and development of over 100 million people through my one-to-one coaching and group training. Because if I'm challenging their thinking to be more incredible than yesterday, what's the biggest output that I want to be working for or working into? Why do I want to do that? Is so they can connect with a deeper sense of purpose. They can create the deeply compelling goals, can connect to the people around them and create a positive legacy time and time again. So I started to think, you know, from state of purpose, designing this goal, and then how do I want that to actually impact a global level? I started to understand that the only difference between a small idea and a big idea is the limit to which you apply in your own head. Because everything, again, coming from that permaculture stuff, you know, learning the things I learned, everything that works on the micro works on the macro. If you look at the climate adjustments underneath a blade of grass, there are slight adjustments in temperature that happen underneath a blade of grass. You will notice that at a higher level is when you walk into a forest, you will notice the temperature actually drops when you walk into woodland. So these things that work on the micro work on the macro. So if I were going to help one person go and get promoted and get, I think my biggest success was a 432% pay rise that I've worked with someone over 5 years, which is a pretty decent outcome. If I can help one person do that, it's exactly the same energy that helps 100 million people. Just a different level of thinking, different level of approach, different level of growth from the blade of grass to the oak tree. Okay, how do I apply that thinking into what I'm doing? 100 million people. So every single day when I start that intention, the first words that is they can become more incredible than yesterday. I am positively and successfully influencing it, and I go through my goal statement every single my purpose statement and my goal statement every single morning to maintain that focus. The outcomes of that, though, and those parts didn't, the contribution and impact part didn't come first, came out of actually what do I want to get. So you start with what do I want to get first, but being super clear that if I want to create several £1 million worth of revenue, what do I have to be giving and contributing that generates that? What's the value that I have to be contributing and adding to the environment that creates that revenue stream, that time with family? Part of my business model is ending 6 weeks traveling as a family, so we can go to a different country, see friends. Is generating income that allows us to do or enables us to do certain things. You know, and it's not selfish. It's a fair exchange for what I want to create in the world at a global level, wherever possible. That creates that as a fair exchange, a fair trade of what I'm putting back in. Hope that answers the question. Crikey.
It does, and it opens other ones really. But I suppose, how have you brought Anna and Poppy along in that journey with you?
Bumpily. And I say that because I teach communication skills. So part of my current day job, we can talk about the dynamics of that in a minute, is teaching leadership skills. I teach communication skills. So what you often find is when you do a psychoanalysis test like Insights or DISC, or even kind of David Merrill's social styles, love languages, those sorts of things, you will find that your significant other is normally your direct opposite. Now, I am very direct. I'm very goal orientated. You know, my negative traits, I can be hyper aggressive in certain sales environments, that sort of thing. Anna on the other side is very amiable. She's very personable. She wants to know that you care about her, and she wants you to know that she cares about you. And she wants to talk about things and work things through. And she might say things to me 3 or 4 times, or one thing 3 or 4 different ways. Whereas I need it in the fewest amount of words, as quick as possible. Let's get on with it. So, and I'm also a future thinker. She's a here and now. So when I'm talking about what's over here 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, she doesn't necessarily see the full picture because I'm thinking, very big, very abstract. And I've learned the lesson over the years that as I've attempted to create this vision and this model, how I communicate it in a different way so that Anna understands it as well. And how she can see that, how it incorporates her. I'll give you a prime example. I qualified as a Psych K facilitator. So we use kinesiology muscle testing to help people shift mental blocks. And I said to her, I'm going on this course. And she was like, well, it's so over many £100. Why are you going on the course? It doesn't make sense. And all I could say to her was, I don't have an answer for that. I just know it's part of the work that I need to be doing in the future. And eventually then Anna's actually gone off and got some work through Psych K, met a facilitator, and they've had some conversations. Anna's had some work. So, now I understand, because now she understands how it's relevant to herself. And she's actually had the experience in the here and now. I just know that it's part of what I need to know for the future, and it will become relevant. So you talk about the intention, a little bit of intuition for me, but it's very big picture. So as men, when we're doing these things, it's super aware, and I teach this to people. I'll give you an interesting story. We have to be super aware that when we're talking to people, more often than not, we're talking to them how we want to be spoken to. And we forget the point. This is what causes most of the arguments between men and women. We get to kind of 7, 8 years in our relationship. The honeymoon period is long gone at this point. But we're now talking to them, rather than the paying attention we did when we first got with those people, we're talking to them how we want to be spoken to, because we're going to go back to the factory default setting. We've stopped being conscious of the dialogue we're having. And it's absolutely vital at this point that we start to remember this, and we go, okay, well, actually, what's important to them? What words are they using to speak to me? What do I need to include in the conversation so they hear what's going on? Because the mother, as the protector of the family, wants to know that her daughter is going to be safe, that there is a level of not going off on some sort of flight of fancy that could be detrimental to what's happening here. And her as a person, she needs that certainty and security, because she is the matriarch of the family. Absolutely right. As the patriarch of the family, to join up and have an equal relationship, I also need to make sure, yes, we're future focused, but that level of security and certainty is given. Why? Because she is the most important person in the conversation. No, that's the same whenever you're communicating with someone. Whoever you're talking to, you make them the most important person in the conversation. Because if they don't hear what you're saying, or they make an incorrect action based on what you've told them, whose fault is it? Is it theirs or yours? It would be mine for not giving the right information. So what I've learned from these 2 elements is, okay, what do I need to include in the conversation with Anna? How do I give Anna a certain sense of security and understanding that I'm doing this, and it looks like this, and there's some structure to this, and there's some tactic in this, and it is going to support the mechanism in this way, so that she has faith in what I'm bringing to the table as well.
I love all you shared there, and I think anybody listening to this, I mean, I've got the benefit of video, and I've met with you already, so I know a little bit about you, but they'll hear it in your voice that you're a really dynamic, energetic,
hope so.
Powerful individual. They hear that. But I also know from our chat before, there's a massive health story in your recent life, which really needs to be told, because it's kind of blew my mind when you shared that. And I think we'll paint another side of the picture for who you are, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you for reminding. And you know what? It ties back into some of this story as well. So my parents are still together. Life has been pretty good. We've lived through austere times. We've lived through a real recession. That might be a little bit kind of harsh. Where mortgages were almost 20% back in the day for my parents. I don't think anyone could imagine what that would be like these days. So everything was fairly normal. At 9 years old, 9 years old, I woke up with severe abdominal pains. It took a little while to get diagnosed because it was one of the first cases to be aware of then. I had Crohn's disease. And over the course of 12 months, around about the age of 9, I had a perforated appendix. I had 15 inches of my bowel removed and then had a huge abscess on it as well. One of my kidneys deflated at this point in time. All these horrendous things. Mum, amazing. There was no Google back in the late 80s, early 90s. My mum was Google. She went and did the research, and I actually cured Crohn's disease. I don't have Crohn's disease anymore. Very strict dieting and way to resolve that. Where we're now, 16th of April, as we're recording this. So just over 5 years ago, from nowhere, with very, very few symptoms, I wake up with severe abdominal pains. I've had this before once, and it cleared up within 12 hours and everything went back to normal. So I thought, oh, it's just that. It didn't clear up. The pain was excruciating. My digestive system, without being explicit on that, had completely shut down. Was no longer working. I eventually went to hospital, kind of 48 hours later, drove myself to A&E in severe pain. Misdiagnosed, back to the GP. GP says, I think something's going on. I think you've got adhesions in your bowel from the scar tissue and something's stuck. I think you've got a problem. You need to go to the hospital. If it's not cleared up in 48 hours, you need to go and check in under a surgeon. I check in on the Wednesday because they haven't stopped. I get a scan. It turns out I've got a hole in my intestine. So the scar tissue from when I was 9 years old has now broken down and deteriorated, and I've got a hole in my intestine. But we've been eating super clean, so the symptoms have been really minimal, and actually I've been living a really normal life. On the Saturday, I'm having an emergency ileostomy. So for those that don't know what an ileostomy is, I basically woke up with a colostomy bag. So they severed my small and my large intestine where the scar had broken down, and they then cut a hole in the wall of your abdomen and you have a bag, which in itself is mind-blowing. It actually makes me emotional thinking about it now. Some of this was historic stuff. So originally back in the day, I was offered at 9 years old to have a colostomy bag. Well, look, in the 80s, you had a colostomy bag for life. There was no reversal at that point. Nowadays, they can reverse it. But to wake up with a bag on your side, basically filling with your own fecal matter, does nothing for your psyche. It's a real blow. So in the course of 10 days, I lost 15 kilos. I'm not a big, broad guy, so I look thin. I'm gaunt. I'm in severe pain. I can only kind of surmise going into something like PTSD type stuff, post-traumatic stress, because I was freaking out because I thought I wasn't going to be able to play with my daughter. I wasn't going to be able to train martial arts. I wasn't going to work in my garden again because I was just a broken man at this point. And I lived with that for 20 months. The real demasculating, and my wife was phenomenal through this time, phenomenal. The real demasculator, though, is when you look at yourself in the mirror, naked for the first time, or you've got to go into the bathroom and you've got to change this bag, once a day or whatever. You feel less of a man because you're there. It's not sexy. There is nothing sexy about having a plastic bag filling with shit. So, your libido goes completely out the window, and it is really, really painful, mentally more than physically. So I lived with this for 20 months. I then had it reversed. So I built everything up. So super clean health. We were eating really like a paleo diet at this point, before this, during. So super low sugars, no glutens anyway, very little alcohol, all of these things. I managed, wearing different outfits to work. I managed the cover up of it. People at work knew about it. Everyone was really good. 20 months later, arranged to go back into hospital to have it reversed. So you go in mentally fit and well and physically fit and well, and have it reversed. It was one of the hardest experiences I've ever had. It was horrendous. And because of my characteristics, I said to the surgeon, which makes me laugh, I'm not sure it made her laugh. I said, I'm going to be out of here in 5 days. And she kind of did that screwed up, kind of squinty eyed, patronising smile face with a clipboard in her hand and patting on the shoulder. Yeah, we'll see about that. And I was like, no, I'm going to be out of here in 5 days. I got out in 7, but I did it, I think, the hard way. She went in, reversed the procedure, put everything back together, removed some of the other scar tissue that was previously there. And everyone who's had surgery or was going to have surgery, one of the key things is to be getting up and mobile, and it's to be drinking water, like sipping water. In that space, I drank too much water because I was just keen to get out of the hospital. The pain, I have never experienced pain like it. So if anyone, and there's a large volume of people that do have this, you'll be very surprised, that do have a colostomy bag or having it reversed. My advice right now, sip the water. Do not drink the water. I polished off about 1.5 litres in the first 24 hours. But what they don't tell you is your intestine is always doing this. It's called the periostatic wave. So it's always moving. You just don't know it because your brain just doesn't need to know about it because it's always doing it. When they do a surgery like that, the periostatic wave stops, it goes into shock, and it takes about 2 to 3 days for it to kick back in properly. So anything that you're putting in literally hits it like a train. So there's me on tramadol, paracetamol, fentanyl, some other morphine, something else, I can't even remember. But I was on 5 different painkillers and I was still, at a point screaming. I've never known anything like it. So valuable lesson there from a medical point of view, from the experience there. But then what happens is I came out the other side of it. And this is where it got a little bit interesting for me from the personal development side of it and the self-reflection, was that small part and the big part being reconnected was like my life coming back together. It was the part of my life that I'd been in denial about the misuse of recreational drugs, the toxic relationships, the dangerous sexual encounters, or promiscuity from my life, my previous life, that I've been in denial about, that I've been trying to close myself off about. And actually this part of my life, which is now me, the leader, the coach, the development person, bringing that stuff back together and really understanding that actually my whole life is the journey. I'm sharing stuff that happened here with other people so it makes sense to them, so it helps them. And I really come to understand that a stained past does not mean a stagnant future. And my stories become someone else's survival guide. So when you talk about, when I talk to people, I can talk to people about having depression. Although I wasn't diagnosed, no one takes that quantity of drugs and takes themselves to that level because it's a good idea or because it's going to, emotionally further or better them. No. So I can talk about that mental state. I've worked with people that have had eating disorders and health issues like that. And I can talk to them from a place of honesty and reverence might be the right word. I'm not sure. That I've had those experiences. I know what it's like to put coping mechanisms in place. So these 2 parts of the life came together. I've now got 5 weeks at home to sort my life out. And that's when the intention and the goal setting and the business stuff started to come to life. Super clarity. One of the biggest lessons I share from this regularly is one of my teachers. It's not about achieving the goal. It's about the person you have to become in order to make that goal a reality. It's one of the vital lessons.
Amazing
perspective.
Yeah, amazing story. I'm so glad you told it, and I love the honesty with which you tell it, because I think that will give anybody who's been through that experience, or anybody who's contemplating it, or even if they're not contemplating it, an enormous sort of heart about it. One thing I want to come back to, and you talked about your mum's role when you originally were diagnosed with Crohn's, and her being Google and supporting you. That sounds like it would be a podcast tale in itself. But I've been asking other dads about their relationship with their dads. And I don't know anything about your early life history, but I can hear some of the things that have happened in your life later on. And I'm just kind of curious to know about what influence did your dad have, good or bad, on you?
So one of the biggest things my dad did was cause tension early on in my career, and he had no idea about this. Again, as a coach in self-reflection, I start to see certain things that happen. So my father, ex-police force, he's been in the forces for over 28 years. My mother was a police officer. That's where they met many, many years ago. They're both only children as well, so they're single children from a very Victorian-esque upbringing in that as well. And my dad would always ask me, what are you going to be? What are you going to do? And that's all he would ever ask me, because he's not a coach, he's a policeman. He's not a personal development guru or anything. And he always wanted me to have a good job so that I could earn good money and retire and have that security. That's all they ever wanted for me, was security. So they did it all with the best intention. My dad helped me get my first job at 15. My dad helped me get my first management job, probably for all the wrong reasons, because my dad had certain influences in certain spaces, and they gave me a job to kind of butter that relationship up. Great, fine. All, for all the wrong reasons. People did it with the best interest, but for all the wrong reasons. And my dad's question was always, what are you going to be? What are you going to do? Push, 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 push. And I just didn't know what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. From 15 to 20 to 30, I had no idea. But he didn't have any more questions to be asking me. But what he actually did from about the age of 14, 15, when he started asking me this question, he started to create a tension in me. And that tension was an understanding that I didn't fit into work. I didn't fit into a normal work life. I didn't fit into a 9 to 5. But because I didn't have those questions and those possibilities, or the different avenues or mentors, or we didn't know about that sort of stuff, like virtual mentors. We didn't know about your Jim Rohns of America, or people from the whatever. We didn't know that. That tension, as I say, that potential that I wasn't able to express myself in the job that I truly was designed to be doing, or didn't know what I was designed, escalated. So that actually became the drug overdose. And it wasn't because of him knowingly. He created a tension where that had to happen in order for me to go through that breaking process. And now as I look back, and I'm thankful for that he created that tension, because he created it in me early, but I just stayed in the tension for too long.
How did he respond to that crisis that you went through?
My parents at the time didn't really know. My mum knows vaguely. My mum's also said she would rather not know. She doesn't want to know the full details. I was fairly discreet in what I was doing. It was a pretty messed up time for me. My only saving grace is, over the course of time that built up to that moment, I built up quite a tolerance to the drugs that we were taking. And as a result of that, I survived. But it took me several years physically, emotionally, to really, really understand why it happened, why it was important that it did happen, and the benefits of it happening. It's super interesting when you start looking at the research that's being done. So for context, I actually took 16 ecstasy tablets and sniffed in excess of 5 grams of cocaine in one sitting, which is a considerable amount. It caused huge amounts of damage. It caused me to break down a lot of my relationships with people, because when I went through that process, one of the things that came out of it is, if I continue down this road, I'm either going to die or go to prison. And I had to ask myself those questions. Is this actually what I'm meant to be doing? Is this what I'm designed to be doing? And even at an early age, I knew kind of I had a purpose, didn't know what it was. And as a result of me having that question, even before becoming a coach, but having some of the personal development stuff, I was able to say, do you know what, this isn't okay. That's not what I'm designed to be doing. And I stepped back from that and stopped doing them, amazingly, in my own, that realization. So it had to happen. But then when you look at the research now, and you look at the use of MDMA is the base chemical of ecstasy. And you look at how they're using MDMA to treat PTSD and people with depression. So now that I've gone to and met people that are part of the group of fellows from King's Imperial College, what's actually happened is I have my personality a lot like this at 24, with all this tension that's built up and all these frustrations and all this negative stuff that I've done and all the hurt that I believed I've caused and all the heartache. I take this vast quantity of drugs that would kill quite a lot of people, and literally my personality falls apart over the course of several days. But I do it in a very unsafe container. I'm doing it very free rein here. So it's taken me a long time to bring those back. Several of my key relationships at that time broke down. Like, that's gone, cut that one off. Okay, best friend jumps into bed with my so-called girlfriend at the time. Okay, that relationship's definitely over for both of those. Okay, what's actually serving me? What's at my benefit? Okay, now I've got the overview of that. I can then bring back together the bits that I actually want and the bits that I actually need and the bits that are beneficial because of that experience, and say, this is how I want to move forward. But like I say, it took me 20 years almost from that point, or kind of 15 to 16 years to go through that process, because I didn't do it with a container of understanding. I just went and did an excessive amount of drugs at a very detrimental level.
And it could have gone either way, right? You know, as you say, it could have gone either way. It seems to me, you know, I mean, this isn't a conversation about suicide. Maybe that's another one we could have, actually. But you know, one of the ways I see suicide is like when people are trying to kill off a part of themselves they cannot bear anymore.
Yeah.
And I also see there's kind of a wisdom playing through. You know, you've been talking, kind of one of the through lines of this conversation has been like how purpose emerges from within you, whether you like it or not, in a sense. And you know, you had that life-changing moment where your person, you know, you took a lot of drugs, your personality broke down, relationships broke down, and from that, all this purpose rebuilt. You know, with lots of fuck ups and misturns and all the rest. You know, that is the feature of everybody's life, really. But you know, it's an amazing story.
But I want to pick up on something you said. You know, that purpose emerges in you, and it does and it doesn't. And I believe in a certain amount of predeterminism based on biology and based on evolution. So, you know, the best bits of you, the best bits of mum, the best bits of dad come together, which we obviously don't like to think about happening at any point in our lives. But from an evolutionary point of view, you're the best parts of them. So you're created for a reason. And they see this in plants, you see this in animals. What nature is doing is creating a balance. Now, there is something that's causing an imbalance. You're designed to be here to create that balance. So you will actually have a set of skills, a way of thinking that is coded into your DNA. And there will be a medium for you to manifest and present that stuff in the best possible way that helps the most people. For you, Matt, this podcast is one of those. And there'll be something that you do intrinsically in your relationship with your family, with your children, and with other people that you bring to this podcast and to the people you talk to. And you can find that golden thread of philosophy that runs through it. Because that's how evolution works. It's there's an imbalance, there's a problem. Okay, how can I create a solution to that? Yeah. What we get caught on, and what I came to realize in the last few years, everything in you, about you, and around you is a solution to a problem. And you can get away. The earphones that you're using, the microphone, the walls, the carpet, the chairs, they're all a solution to a problem. But when you take this at a personal level, what's your liver doing? What are your eyes doing? What are your teeth doing? They're all a solution to a problem. My teeth are here to help me bite into things so I can eat food. My eyes have actually developed over a course of time to see the best possible way. So when we start to understand that everything in us everything in us and about us is a solution to a problem, we can then stop believing that actually we are a problem or part of the problem. Because that's where a lot of the mental health stuff comes in. Then it escalates over a course of time. And then it comes, you know, actually I want to kill off a part of myself. I don't see a positive future. I don't see how I can move without causing some sort of pain. I'm already causing a problem. And then people go through the steps, which means they complete.
Yeah, brilliant. Nathan, this has been a fantastic conversation. Loved every minute of it. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom and your big heart with us.
Thank you.
Where can we find out more about you?
All right. Easiest way, you can go to nathansimmondscoaching.com. Right now, there is a free email course sitting on there at the moment. I hope I'm allowed to plug this, by the way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's the 5 key pillars of leadership that I believe that you need to be a great leader. And that also covers everything from parenting as well as working with friends, because parenting and leadership are not two sides of the same coin. They're one and the same thing. And parenting is the biggest leadership journey we'll ever go on. So you can go on there, you can find me there, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Just send me a message. You want to talk about anything that I've covered here? You want to dig into what's going on with your career, leadership? Please ask me. I love this stuff. I love sharing it. And I'm happy to have a conversation.
Fantastic. Well, I'll put all that in the show notes as well. But it's been great having a chat with you. Thanks again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.